Hi, I'm Everett. Welcome back to the shop. This time what we've got is a little bit of a repair project on something that I actually pulled out of the trash. Here in town where I live, every year there is what's a bulk garbage cleanup, and large objects that people wouldn't normally throw out throughout the year in a dumpster or whatever. What the idea is you put that sort of stuff out at the curb, and when it's on the curb, whoever would want it, or have a use for it, can drive by and pick it up, and it gets reused. A lot of stuff still goes to the landfill or recycle or such, but what it does is it gives a really good second life to a lot of stuff that most people would just normally pitch and it'd be gone. Well, a couple years ago, I was just cruising around on treasure hunt week and found this little Toddler quad, a little Power Wheels unit, little 6-volt battery inside, just like it does maybe 3 miles an hour. This is long before our little man was ever on the way even. So I just thought it was cool and I wanted to do something with it. I had to fix the steering. Steering was had a little bit of a problem with it. But the biggest problem is the fact that there was no charger, and the battery in it just really doesn't hold a charge for very long at all. So it was getting weak. And so rather than spending the money on a bit of money on the actual Power Wheels battery, the cheap side of me came out. And again, this is me reverse engineering a little piece that we're going to be using here, and I'm going to be supervising him using it. So take the information as it is, and use it at your own discretion. If you would rather not do what I'm doing with this, then by all means, that's fine. But for what it's worth, this is how I'm going to fix it up and how I'm going to let my little guy use it. So this is the battery out of that little quad, and I've tried charging it. What I did was I tried charging it, and then I let it sit for quite a while. After letting it sit for a couple months, do an open circuit voltage test, and I don't know if you can see it from there, but we're about 1.9 volts. So it's toast. And like I say, it really doesn't hold much of a charge. It only maybe run the thing for a couple minutes, and then it just starts going flat. Now, this battery itself, cheapest I found here in Canada is about 55, 60 bucks. This is the actual Power Wheels branded one. So what I did was I took this battery here and did the measurements of the width, depth, and height, and found that what's a commercial battery called an RT650 size is pretty much the same exact size here, just a little bit shorter, just by a little bit. As well, this one here is a 6-volt 4 amp hour. The RT650 is a 6-volt 5 amp hour. What kind of got me curious though is on the very top here it says internal self-resetting fuse, which is basically a circuit breaker. Yes, I know there are a couple different types of resetting fuses. Whatever. We don't really want to get into the details of that at the moment. However, what I wound up doing was, just out of curiosity, I wound up taking and cracking all the way around to get this lid loose. Once I was able to get the lid loose, I could look inside. And once inside, you can see the 3 caps to the 3 gel cell areas, your positive lead, your negative lead, and then here's the circuit breaker. I couldn't get any information off this guy here as far as amperage rating. Nothing on the numbers, are all proprietary numbers on the top. So with a little bit of snooping on the forums, as far as like the Power Wheels modding forums and such, because I never knew that there were people out there who actually hot rodded these things. Go figure. Truthfully, it's actually kind of given me some crazy ideas, and well, let's just say that I'll have to wait till little man's a little older and my wife might be a little bit more accepting of crazy hot rodding ideas of that sort of thing. She is a nurse, so I'd rather not push it. Looking at this thing though, apart from that little circuit breaker in there, I don't see anything that makes this thing any more special than any other gel cell. Off to Amazon we went, and found this RT650 battery for give or take about 15 bucks Canadian delivered. Enter the ubiquitous little brown box. There we go. RT650 battery. I mean, it's not written on the side there, but it's what was in the catalog. I even took measurements, with the measuring tape, and it's pretty much bang on the same size. You can even see the ridge there between the actual case itself and the lid section. It's all the same height. So the only difference is this does not have any sort of circuit protection on it, but that's easily fixed. I go down, see my buddy Dave at Part Stop. I got me a 15 amp circuit breaker. What made me decide on 15 amps? Well, in a nutshell, what I did was I took my multimeter and hooked this battery up with basically alligator leads to the motor and the connector, and held the rear axle. Holding the rear axle, pushing the button, I was pegging around a little over 10 amps. So if it's really going to start working, because the thing is, I don't want him to stall out and have this thing stop all the time. So you got to have a little bit of variance in there. But finding it was only pulling 10, 11 amps or whatever at stall, I'm going to start with a 15 if it's going to, and I'll adjust from there if necessary. I'll bring it down to a 10 or bring it up to a 20 if necessary. What we need to do now is actually take the leads off of this battery, because, I mean, this thing's toast. I want to use the original plug. I don't want to bastardize the connector into the motor in any which way, shape, or form. I like these plugs. This is actually a very nice beefy plug for what it's supposed to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut these off and then put spade terminals on to attach to that. Now, I'm not just going to grab it and go right across. As much as it really doesn't have that much of a charge into it, I realize that's also very, very bad style. That can go to the recycle bin. Now this is something that, I mean, maybe I'm just a little bit persnickety about how I do things. What I like to do, especially in something like this, if you just score the plastic sleeve on these crimp-on connectors, just score them and push on the one side a little bit, try not to slice your finger open. You can twist that little plastic piece off. For something like this, I'm actually going to use shrink tube over top the whole mess, so I just don't want any sort of plastic getting in the way. We're now going to solder these. I realize the other connections are only crimped. That's fine. But if I can solder it, I'd like to. Yeah, this is one of those third-hand deals that come in handy, but I don't have one. Next, we'll cut off some shrink tube. And finally, to finish off the shrink tube job, we're going to use our heat gun. Yes, I realized on a video a while back, or not that long ago, I used a small micro torch to heat it up. I do actually like using the proper tools. It's just I couldn't really get this thing in there. The end terminals are not protected. Now, if we wanted to, we could actually just plug this right onto the battery and plug it right into the connector on the little quad there, and it would work. It would probably function just fine unless we had some sort of fault, electrical fault, and that's where the circuit breaker came into play in the original battery. We need to make one more piece, and that's where this scrap chunk of wire comes in. What we're going to do is we'll also bare the ends of this wire off and solder on the terminals, and then that'll allow us to install our inline circuit breaker so that we have circuit protection. And well, I know the odds are against my little guy burning this thing up underneath him, but it's my little guy sitting on this machine, so as much as I am hacking this thing, I'd like to do it with at least a reasonable amount of caution. And there we go, jumper cable. Hook our negative lead to our battery. Hook the jumper cable, or jumper lead, to the positive. And we're going to break off these extensions just so it's nice and short, because that's all we need. Hook our jumper to the breaker, and hook the power lead for the cart to the other side of the breaker. There you go. Everything's nice and isolated. Now it just comes down to readjusting how we hold the battery inside the chassis of the quad. Right here is where the battery sits. Now the old battery used to sit in there pretty much flush with the surface and had this little metal clip laying over top of it with a screw on the one side holding it down. Our new battery is not quite as tall. So where it sits, there's going to be a bit of an issue. What we're going to do to get around that is fairly simple and low tech or low budget. Chunk of OSB. That little chunk of OSB is actually almost exactly the same height, or almost exactly the same as the height difference between the old battery and the new battery. I'll take, and that will secure this new battery just happily. I mean, if I really wanted to, I could have gotten on the milling machine and made something pretty and whatever, but really, this is a Toddler quad that I pulled out of, well, bulk garbage day, and putting a $15 battery in it. It's already kind of beat up anyway, which actually is not a bad thing, because my son, he's only a year old, but he's already kind of hard on stuff. So here's our breaker. Now before we connect it, let's find a spot where we can mount the circuit breaker and make it easy to access. Yeah, I think I'm going to do the back wall. I'm not too worried about the warranty contact numbers for Power Wheels, so I can put it right over that label. Trim the excess off that guy. There we go. So now I have a circuit breaker installed. We'll hook up our connector. And if all goes well, there we go. Yeah, we have motion. So now I just have to put the lid back on and let little goober give it a try. Best $18 toy ever. Now it just needs to figure out how to use the throttle. But again, it's just time to say thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, thanks to everybody who clicks the thumbs up and that makes comments. It's a lot of fun interacting with everybody here on YouTube. And we'll see you next time. Oops, should probably get him off the neighbor's yard though.